Hello everyone and welcome to the first video in our series Design for Non-Designers to help you understand why design matters and how it can help with memory and information retention and application with our learners in both online and face-to-face classrooms. My name is Sarah Schroeder and I'm a faculty member in the University of Cincinnati School of Education Instructional Design and Technology program. I'm also an educator, designer, and online school mom of two adorable middle schoolers. Today, we are going to start this series off by unpacking why we should keep our design simple for learners and caregivers and parents who may be using it at home. Discuss design basics to keep in mind when we're creating and delivering our remote digital learning. And then in future sessions, we're going to be evaluating some sample slides, looking at strategies and classroom layouts and some other pieces that can help us determine how we can improve our design overall. So the first thing to consider when you're talking about design is how you're going to do it. And all of us have different skill sets, different strengths, different tools we're comfortable with. And I want you to consider design as just communication. It's communicating clearly by whatever means we can control or master. So that will look different for every teacher. And that's why we're calling this Design for Non-Designers, because designers may use high-end tools that many of us either don't have access to or don't have time to learn. And what we're really talking about is simple steps that we can use to improve our design to help our students learn by whatever means we can control or master. The other consideration when you're talking about design is empathy. So as a designer, we need to see empathy as a realization that we are not designing for ourselves, but for others. So I tell the teachers I train and work with that we are not the end users of our design. Our students are. We have to design from a student-centered approach with the student use in mind. We cannot design for ourselves or our designs will be ineffective to support learning. And to do that, we have to get into the lives of the people who will use it, who in this instance of design are our students and sometimes our parents and caregivers. So we need to consider empathy, and that needs to be at the forefront of all of the decisions we make, is how is our end user going to use this and how is it going to benefit their learning? So to answer that question, we have to start thinking through why design is critical to learning and how it really is more than just pretty fonts and decoration, and how we need to make time for it because it is critical to learning. So our brains only have a certain amount of working memory. It really has a limited capacity, and our brains can only handle a certain amount at one time. That certain amount is broken down into 3 different types of cognitive load. So we can look at extraneous load, which are all the extras that get in the way. So for some students, it could be external factors like hunger, like stress outside of school or stress in school. It could be the child sitting next to them who is wiggling and moving and tapping on their desk. But for digital design, that extraneous load might be too much clip art, too many fonts, too many colors, a lack of structure, anything that's going to confuse the learner and cause extra work on their brains to process information and for learning to happen. That intrinsic load is going to be the inherent complexity of the learning material. So we can't do a lot about this. Sometimes I am just naturally not strong at math. I get overwhelmed by science, but you give me English and I can fly through it. It comes very easy for me as a learner. So intrinsic load in English for me is low, but intrinsic load in math and science is high. If a teacher designs their materials and their instruction and their assignments in a clear, organized way and provides the right supports for me, that's going to help me manage that intrinsic load for those difficult subjects. So design is really important so that we're not adding to the load for our students, and instead we're minimizing that extraneous load, helping them manage their intrinsic load, and then maximizing the germane load or that working memory. So it really happens when a course is well designed. Proper design techniques and the right tools can be used to facilitate an effective learning process for our students, which really helps us manage cognitive load in a positive way and improve learning retention and application overall. Another thing we want to think about is universal design for learning. Universal design for learning is a complex series of how our brain learns. These concepts were designed by CAST in 2018, and they focus on engagement, representation, and action and expression. So when we're looking at multiple means of engagement, we're really thinking about what are the different ways that we are affecting the networks that answer the why of learning. So how are we addressing the affective networks? How are we addressing the why? How are we stimulating interest? And how are we motivating our students to learn? And how is our design preventing motivation from dropping? When we're looking at representation and multiple means of representation, it's really the what of learning. So we're presenting information and content in different ways, so our students have some choice and they have multiple ways to access their learning and content to best meet their preferred learning methods. And then we also want to provide multiple means of action and expression, or that how of learning. So we want them to have a variety of activities that are well designed. We want to differentiate the ways students can express what they know in their assignments, whether it's formative or summative. So we want to really give our students some variety, but in that variety we give them, we want it to be meaningful and purposeful, and we want it to help them and motivate them for learning and keep them engaged and moving forward in a productive way. So when we're looking at universal design and actually visual design, we want to minimize threats and distractions. So confusing content, too many colors, too many fonts, all that extraneous load, poor organization of our content, that can increase anxiety for our learners, and it can increase distractions for learning. By paying attention to multiple means of representation, we're giving them some flexible content, preferably well-designed, meaningful, flexible content that reinforces the learning. And then when we're thinking about action and expression, we are really considering how can we help our students manage information and resources to best understand and have some options for how they can express their learning. So we're going to do all of that by looking at visual design basics in our next few series of videos on design for non-designers. So to give you just a little taste, I want you to look at this slide. Which is easier, the to-do list on the left or the to-do list on the right? So we think about why design is important. We can clearly look at this and know that the list on the left, even though it's the same content as the list on the right, there's no difference. The design of it is making it difficult for our brains to process, whether we have vision impairments or color blindness, or whether we're just trying to find the key pieces quickly, which we can't do when there's no difference and there's no contrast and the alignment isn't done in an effective way. The one on the right is easy for our brains to process. This reduces the load of trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do and help me as a learner to focus on how I'm going to do it, how I'm going to learn it, how I'm going to practice it, and how I'm going to demonstrate my learning. So as we go through these principles, I want you to consider how can we improve learning for our learners with simple tips and tricks in our visual design. In the next video, we are going to look at some design principles, including the CARP principles and hierarchy of information, and how we can use those things to improve memory and learning for our students. So join us in our next video, and thank you for watching.